This isn't a love story. This is the story of how a woman stepped into my daughter's and my life pretending to bring warmth, only to slowly turn our home into a living hell. From throwing away the keepsakes of my late wife to poisoning my daughter's mind with cruel words, everything she did was to feed her twisted ego. And I, a father who once believed I could endure anything for the sake of my child, finally had to rise up and protect her before it was too late. This is the whole truth from beginning to end. Chapter 1. The Tragic Beginning. I never thought my life would take such a dark turn. My wife, Liliana, was the love of my life. She had given me the happiest years, and the greatest gift of all was Abby, our little daughter full of mischief, always running around the house with her infectious laughter. I thought we would watch her grow up together through her school years, her rebellious teenage phase, and eventually the day she walked into her first college lecture hall. But everything collapsed in a single morning. Liliana was pregnant with our second child, and we had been eagerly awaiting a baby boy. Yet that joy turned into a nightmare. The boy never cried his first cry, and in that fateful moment I lost Liliana as well. I hadn't even had the chance to scream out my grief before I had to pull myself together. Abby was only 4 years old. She needed me more than ever. I looked into her innocent eyes filled with fear as she asked, "Where's Mommy?" And I knew I couldn't fall apart. So I buried the pain deep inside, swallowed my tears, and put all my strength into raising Abby. From that day forward, I turned away from women, from dating, from even thinking about building a new family. For 12 long years, I focused solely on work and taking care of Abby, making sure her world stayed stable, that she never felt lacking in any way. I wanted her to know that even though her mother was gone, she still had a father who would protect her with everything he had. And I truly believed I could keep living that way until Abby was old enough to stand on her own. But then when Abby turned 16, a woman appeared out of nowhere. And from that moment on, my life would never again be peaceful. Chapter 2. Veronica Appears. I met Veronica in a way that most people would probably consider ordinary, nothing special at all. At the coffee shop right near my office. Every day I'd stop by and order the same thing, a black coffee, a little milk, no sugar. I never changed it, and I never said much. But Veronica was different. Every single day she remembered exactly what I drank. Sometimes she'd smile brightly, ask me a casual question or two, and most notably, she always mentioned Abby. At first I was a bit surprised. Why would a barista at a coffee shop care about my daughter? But Veronica always seemed to have a little gift for Abby, sometimes a cute hair clip, sometimes a small lip gloss. Each time she'd hand it to me, she'd say, "Your daughter will probably love this." And I have to admit, it softened me. What struck me even more was the way she spoke about Liliana. Whenever I happened to mention something about the past, Veronica never showed discomfort. On the contrary, she would gently touch my hand and whisper, "She must have been a wonderful woman. You and Abby must miss her so much." Those seemingly simple words pierced right into the painful emptiness I'd always tried to keep hidden. Abby and I had always had one rule: never keep secrets. But for the first time in 16 years of being a father, I broke that rule. I started seeing Veronica at first short dates after work, then walks, then dinners. Of course, Abby caught on quickly. One evening when I came home, she giggled, "How long were you planning to keep this from me?" I saw it already. "Dad's got a girlfriend." I stammered, not knowing how to explain, but Abby threw her arms around me, smiling. "Dad, you deserve to be happy. I want to see you smile like this more often." Hearing that, I finally allowed myself to breathe, and from that moment on, I gave myself permission to open up. 6 months later, Veronica moved in with us. I thought this would be a fresh start, a complete family for Abby. But little did I know, this was only the beginning of the nightmare. Chapter 3. The First Signs. When Veronica moved into the house, I told myself there would be changes, and that was normal. Everyone needs time to adjust to blend in. But soon, those changes began to take on a very different tone. At first, it was just about the kitchen. Veronica rearranged Liliana's spice rack, saying that her way was more practical. I felt a flicker of discomfort, but reassured myself it was just a matter of habit. Then she took Liliana's old apron and donated it, claiming it was moldy and worn out. I nodded quietly, thinking maybe I was being too sensitive. But as days went by, I started noticing that Liliana was slowly being erased from our home. The keepsakes, the little things tied to Abby's memories, they disappeared. And then came the day I will never forget. That afternoon, Abby was out with her friends, and I decided to cook carbonara using Liliana's recipe, the dish that had nourished Abby's childhood. I remember pulling out that worn piece of paper when suddenly Veronica stormed over, snatched it from my hand, and tossed it straight into the garbage disposal. She looked at me with contempt and said, "You need to stop living in the past. It's pathetic clinging to the recipe of someone who's dead." I froze, stunned, unable to react, when out of nowhere a sharp slap landed across my face. Veronica's voice turned cold as ice. "You should be grateful I'm even willing to raise another woman's child. Most women wouldn't even give you the time of day." My cheek burned, but my heart hurt far worse. I didn't fight back. I didn't argue. I simply turned back to the pot of boiling water and kept cooking. Yes, I stayed silent. Not because I was weak, but because I thought of Abby. She had only just begun to laugh again, only just found joy in having a new mom. I couldn't bring myself to snatch that fragile sense of stability away from her. But looking back now, I wish I hadn't stayed silent that day, because my silence was exactly the opportunity Veronica needed to push further until she turned my home into a suffocating prison where I could hardly breathe. Chapter 4. Abby Gets Manipulated. Everything became clearer during our trip to Miami. Normally, Abby was the type of kid who loved to sleep in every vacation. She would complain about missing the hotel breakfast. But this time was different. She got up early, quietly, sat at the table, and just pushed her food around, hardly touching a bite. When I asked about it, Veronica just smiled and brushed it off. "She's a girl. It's just girl stuff. We're doing a little health challenge together." I tried to press Abby for answers, but she snapped. "Leave me alone, Dad. I know what I'm doing." Then she buried herself in her phone as if hiding something. I lied to myself. I told myself maybe it was just teenage stuff, private things she didn't want to share. And I ignored the signs that, looking back now, were desperate cries for help. 2 weeks after we got back, I picked up Takeout Panda Express, Abby's favorite. I knocked on her door, but there was no answer. A bad feeling surged through me, and I pushed the door open. What I saw nearly brought me to my knees. Abby was standing on a scale, her eyes red and swollen, her face so hollow I almost didn't recognize her. Baggy clothes hung off a frail frame that looked like a skeleton. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm not good enough. Mom would be disappointed in me." I rushed over and wrapped her in my arms. She collapsed against my shoulder, sobbing, and confessed that Veronica had been telling her she was a disgrace to Liliana, that her real mother would be disgusted if she saw her now. Hearing that, I felt my whole body ignite fury boiling so hot, I thought I would explode. But first, I had to save my daughter. I guided Abby to the kitchen, cooked her favorite pasta, and coaxed her to eat spoonful by spoonful, comforting her like I had when she was a little girl. All the while, my mind was spinning. I knew then I could no longer stay silent. If I let this continue, Veronica would destroy Abby body and soul. And in that very moment, I swore to myself, no matter what it takes, I will expose Veronica's true self. Chapter 5. The Truth Revealed. After that night, I understood one thing. It was time to fight back. Abby no longer had the strength to resist on her own. She needed me, and this time I would not let silence kill us both. What Veronica didn't know was that for months, I had already been secretly gathering evidence. I had sensed something was wrong ever since she first threw away Liliana's belongings, so I installed small cameras in the living room, recording every strange behavior. I saved audio clips of every insult, every slap, every threat. I even kept photos of bank statements when I noticed Abby's savings account mysteriously dwindling. By then, I had enough to build a case. Veronica wasn't just a difficult woman, she was a systematic manipulator, and I had the proof. That night, when Abby collapsed in my arms, my resolve became clearer than ever. I texted Veronica, "I'm taking Abby to the ER for dehydration." I knew for sure she would panic, rush home immediately, desperate to control the situation as she always did. When Veronica stormed into the house, her face flushed, not with worry, but with rage. I was already waiting. I let her spew excuses, accuse me of being a hysterical father, until I quietly pulled out my phone. With a single tap, the video played Veronica shoving Abby's meal onto the floor, calling her a disgusting fat pig, and smirking as Abby sobbed. Her face drained of color, shifting from fiery red to ashen pale like a mask being ripped away. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Veronica's eyes said it all. She knew the game had changed. But instead of collapsing, she grew more dangerous. I saw a sharp, calculating glint in her eyes like an animal cornered ready to strike, and I realized the real battle was only beginning. This time, though, I was ready. Chapter 6. Building a Network of Allies. I knew I couldn't fight this battle alone. Veronica was far too skilled at playing the victim. If it came down to just my accusations, no one would believe me. I needed allies, people who could witness the truth with their own eyes. The first person I called was Lisa, my sister. Lisa is a nurse, someone used to facing harsh realities without flinching. The moment she walked into my house and saw Abby curled up on the sofa, her eyes sunken, her cheekbones jutting out, Lisa froze. She didn't waste time asking questions, she simply pulled out. Her medical kit checked Abby's blood pressure, took her pulse. I watched her face shift from concern to grim seriousness. When I showed her the video of Veronica degrading Abby, Lisa squeezed my hand tightly and said, "You don't have to prove anything anymore. We will protect her." From that moment on, Lisa became my first shield, a sister, yes, but also a medical professional whose words carried undeniable weight. Then slowly, others joined. Abby's best friend's mother texted me saying Veronica had called her demanding that she restrict Abby's food whenever Abby stayed over. She admitted it felt strange, but only after I showed her the evidence did she grasp the severity of it all. Even Abby's gym teacher had noticed. She told me Abby no longer had the strength to run laps, sometimes barely able to stand, without swaying. The teacher's words cut deep into me. I don't know what's happening at home, but someone is draining the life out of her. The more voices joined in, the less control Veronica had. But she didn't sit still. Instead, she began spreading rumors everywhere that I was obsessed with my late wife, that I was mentally unstable, dragging Abby into my sick delusions. I felt both furious and anxious. But every time I looked at Abby, frail but still trying to force a smile, I knew I had to be patient. Veronica's game was manipulation and division. My weapon was the truth. And truth takes time to shine through. One ally at a time, one link after another, the chain was forming. And I realized the more people who saw Veronica's true face, the closer she was to her collapse. Chapter 7. The Climax Before the Birthday Party. Just when I thought things couldn't possibly get any worse, I stumbled upon something that made my blood boil all over again. While cleaning the kitchen, I happened to find the box of tea Veronica had been forcing Abby to drink every night. The label was scratched off, but one corner still remained, revealing the words, "Double Strength Sleep Aid. A high-dose sleeping aid." I froze. It wasn't herbal tea. It wasn't for glowing skin like she had always claimed. It was a drug. Suddenly, everything made sense why Abby was constantly tired and lethargic, even after sleeping 10 hours a night. Her body had been poisoned night after night. Holding that box in my hands, I felt both nauseous and trembling with rage. Veronica wasn't just destroying Abby's spirit, she was destroying her health. But that wasn't the end. Abby's 16th birthday was coming up. It was supposed to be a sweet milestone, a day filled with joy and love. Yet when I stopped by the bakery to check the order, my knees nearly gave out. On the order slip was a cake with the words, "Finally perfect at 16." And worse underneath were two photos, one of Abby from before healthy, radiant, smiling, and one of her now emaciated, gaunt, nothing but skin and bones. I stood there, my fists clenching so tightly, the veins bulged in my arms. Veronica wanted to turn Abby's birthday into a grotesque showcase of her achievement. She wanted applause for transforming my daughter when in truth, she was the very monster who had driven Abby into this state. That night, when I told Abby about the cake, she broke down sobbing uncontrollably. She begged me through her tears, "Dad, please don't let people see me like this. I don't want to be a joke." I held her close, my heart shattering into pieces with every word. And in that very moment, I knew if Veronica wanted to turn that party into her stage, then I would turn it into the place where her mask would be ripped off once and for all in front of everyone. Chapter 8. Sweet, 16, and the Face Plant. Abby's 16th birthday finally arrived. I could see the anxiety in her eyes even as she tried to put on a little lipstick and slip into the dress she once loved. Her thin face made my chest ache, but I held her hand and whispered, "It's okay. I'm here. We'll get through this." Veronica, on the other hand, looked radiant, as if the day belonged to her. Every step, every smile radiated with a fake joy. I knew she was waiting for her big moment, the applause, the recognition for the achievement she had forced on my daughter. The party began with chatter, laughter, and well wishes. But the atmosphere shifted the moment Veronica had the staff bring out the cake. And just as I feared, written across it were the words, "Finally perfect at 16." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and all eyes turned to Abby. I saw her trembling, her eyes glassy with tears, her shoulders beginning to shake. Veronica seized the microphone, smiling brightly. Let's raise a glass to Abby. After so much effort, she's finally become the best version of herself." No applause, no cheers, only a heavy silence. I looked around and saw faces twisted in shock and disapproval. Some mothers shook their heads. Some fathers frowned, glancing uneasily at their own daughters. Abby broke down. She collapsed into sobs, burying her face in her hands as if she wanted to disappear. I immediately stepped forward, snatched the microphone from Veronica's hand. The room went silent. I didn't need to make a speech. I simply pointed to the cruel words on the cake, then wrapped Abby tightly in my arms. That was the moment everything clicked for the crowd. The rumors, the whispers about how Veronica treated Abby, the scattered stories from neighbors, friends, relatives, all of it pieced together into one undeniable truth. Veronica tried to laugh, tried to explain, but her voice shook, choked with forced tears. For the first time I saw it in their eyes, the crowd no longer believed her. The mask had fallen. The party ended in chaos. Guests quietly left, some stopping to shake my hand, whispering that now they understood. Veronica sat there, eyes blazing, but no one was left to side with her. That night, as I held Abby in my arms while she slept, I knew I had won an important battle. But this wasn't the end. This was only Veronica's first downfall, and I would have to go much further to tear out root and branch the poison she had planted in my daughter's life. Chapter 9. Veronica's Complete. Downfall. After that birthday party, everything shattered. No one believed in the facade of the devoted mother that Veronica had tried so desperately to build. One by one, witnesses and details emerged like hammer blows, striking down her false mask. Lisa, my sister, officially documented Abby's medical records, noting her malnutrition and prolonged exhaustion. My mother, who had once been swayed by Veronica, publicly apologized to me, admitting she had seen, with her own eyes, how Veronica pushed away Abby's plate of food. Neighbors began speaking up to recalling times they had witnessed Veronica yelling at Abby out in the yard. Day by day, the circle closed in tighter. I compiled everything: videos, audio recordings, bank statements, photos of Abby's declining health, a complete dossier, every toxic action of Veronica's captured without a single gap. Veronica began to panic. She called everyone, my family, friends, co-workers, screaming that I was fabricating everything, that I was delusional. because I couldn't move on from my late wife. But this time, no one wanted to listen. What they had seen with their own eyes needed no explanation from me. The breaking point came when Lisa discovered the box of sleep tea Veronica had forced Abby to drink each night. The sleeping pill label was still intact, irrefutable proof. When that truth spread, even Veronica's own mother went silent, unable to defend her daughter anymore. That very day, I called for a family meeting at my parents' house. Everyone sat in a circle, each person standing up to share what they had witnessed. From Lisa to my mother to the neighbors to Abby's friends' parents, every voice agreed on one thing: Veronica had gone far beyond the line. Faced with the mountain of evidence, Veronica sat there pale-faced, her eyes darting desperately around the room, searching for someone, anyone to cling to. But there was no one left. Not a single person stood by her side. In the end, I gave her a choice. Either she signed the agreement to leave our lives forever, or I would deliver the entire file to the police, the court, to anyone who could make her pay. Her hand shook as she signed her name. And just like the way she had suddenly entered my life, and Abby she left, taking nothing with her but a few clothes. I stood by the window watching her car disappear down the road. For the first time in months, the air in the house felt clean. Abby sat beside me, still thin and fragile, but her eyes held a new light. She whispered, "Dad, we're free now, aren't we?" I held her tightly and answered, "Yes, sweetheart, we're free." It wasn't just Veronica's downfall. It was the rebirth of us, father and daughter, a small family finally finding peace again after the storm.